Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information with some laughs, might I add. Hello, everyone. I wanted to start this spoilers episode a little bit differently. When I post the stuff on Reddit and Facebook, I sometimes come across some interesting questions about the set itself. A particular question that came up was, what is legal and standard and what is not? I forget that this isn't common knowledge and that it's quite convoluted, or at least I forget it's convoluted, because there's essentially like 3 sets within a single set, because not everything is legal and standard. This is the standard set symbol. It's the storybook that's opened up and you see it from the page side. But if we look at this symbol, this is the commander set symbol. It's the storybook from the spine side of the emblem. So I'm just imagine it just flipped over, and why it looks like this. This is only legal in sets like Commander and Legacy and Vintage. The next symbol I want to talk about, which is a bit of a spoiler because I didn't talk about this in the first 2 episodes. If you look at the middle of the card here, it looks like a little, crescent moon in the shape of a bird wing, and it has a star in it. These are not legal in standard. They are legal in other formats if they got in printings in them. Grook's Uprising was printed a long time ago and is legal in modern and more eternal sets, but it's not in standard right now. You can play these if your shop allows you to in limited formats. Not every store lets you play these things, but it'd be pretty wild to play some of the other stuff that I've already showed you, like Bitter Blossom falls in this category, and Blood Moon falls in this category, and so on and so forth. Anything with this weird little bird wing with the star in it. As to what products contain these, the Enchanting Tales of special enchantments can be found in draft set and collector boxes. Anime Enchanting Tales, same story, but the extended arts and the confetti foils, those are different stories. You can only get those in the collector boxes. I am not a big fan of the foiling process, so I don't really care about the confetti foils. It's just the sound of what it is. It describes what it actually is. It's just a different foiling process. My luck with the foils for a long time has been you open it and it's a Pringle right out of the package.
I'm just not interested.
So I haven't bought a foil purposely or traded for a foil purposely in a long time. The only time I do is help a buddy out if they want to offload some stuff and I don't have a copy of it, and most of my trade binder is just full of stuff I'll never play anyways, so I'm not really attached to it. The stuff I'm more interested is the Anime Enchanted Tales, because the full arts, they're cool, and you could get them in all 3 of those products, meaning there's going to be a saturated market with those cards. It's going to influence its final resting price point or when it bottoms out, because right now stores are just trying to get money where they can, and things are way more expensive pre-ordering always. So just be weary about that, especially if you're new and you don't know any better of how that usually goes down. And this information's pulled straight from the Magic the Gathering website. This isn't, Wikipedia and someone's just filling in information on their own accord. This is coming straight from, I guess, Hand That Feeds Us. Just the new cards in general interest me. I've talked about a couple of very powerful things just between the first and second video, that if I am to buy a sealed product, it's just, I could get everything I possibly want from just draft boosters or set boosters. The Enchanting Tales versions with the unique filigree borders, there's one in every single pack, okay? And that's in boosters and sets. And there's 3 to 4 in the collector boxes. The anime ones, they didn't give you a specific number, it just says in some packs. They're a little more rare, but I mean, that's still a lot of cards coming into circulation. With that out of the way, let's go over the spoilers that came out for today. That's what most of us came here for, right? Elvish Archivist. It's a 2-drop, 0/1. Whenever one more artifacts enter the battlefield, put 2 counters on Elvish Archivist. Unfortunately, it only triggers once a turn. Hopefully you have a way to put artifacts into play on other people's turns, because then you could really make this thing grow insanely out of control. Whenever one or more enchantments enter the battlefield, draw a card. Again, only triggers once a turn. This is a cool little creature. It kind of pulls itself in multiple directions. I think drawing cards is more powerful, so I'd rather play this in an Enchantress deck personally, if I was to play it. I don't like that you're limited to drawing only once a turn, but it's definitely a fair Enchantress to add to your decks. Then again, we just got Anixia, and That deck included 9 of the 10 possible enchantresses. That deck is pretty crowded with card advantage, and I don't know if you could fit this in there, but it's a cool little card. Why not run it? Hilda of the Icy Crown.
The cold never bothered me anyway.
Whenever you tap an untapped creature an opponent controls, you may pay additional 1, and you choose one of the following. Make a 4/4 token, put a 1/1 on each creature you control, or scry 2, draw a card. Those are all pretty significant things. There are tons of ways in white and blue that forcibly tap your opponent's creatures down. It just feels a little gimmicky to pursue. I guess you leave your opponents open for getting tagged. You're tying yourself up in mana to cast those creatures, especially the ones that ETB and tap stuff down, like Frostlinks. That's like the classic. That costs 3 mana, and you have to pay an additional 1 to get one of these effects. If your board gets wide enough, I could see you pursuing the counter. If you don't have any creatures on board, putting a 4/4 into play so you can protect yourself sounds like a good idea. If you're looking for a card specifically to dig yourself out a hole, then scrying for 2 and then drawing a card. There seems to be a lot of applications with Hilda. Then there are the tapper creatures, the Tim kind of cards. A lot of white cards have these kinds of creatures that tap other people's creatures down. Maybe I'll give it a shot because I'm interested to see how far you could take this archetype. It just seems very niche. So this is a commander product card. There are going to be 10 unique cards in each of the 2 decks. And then there's going to be like these secretive 8 cards that aren't in the commander decks, but are seeded into the set and collector boosters. I don't know what they are yet. They haven't been spoiled. So just keep an eye out for those. They're usually like very thematic in that have the slightly same name as each other, and they all do different things. And they're usually different based on the color that they're in. But we'll talk about this commander card. It's a 4-drop legendary creature, has an ETB trigger and an attack trigger. You attach a virtuous roll to another creature you control. It also has the clause if it already has a roll, you have to choose one. But this virtuous roll is quite powerful. The roll enchantment doesn't care if the creature itself is enchanted, it just cares about how many enchantments you have in play. So the other clause on the bottom is whenever an enchanted creature controlled deals damage to the player, you draw a card. This is a cool little card advantage engine that sizes up creatures to be incredibly scary. If you're putting one of these virtuous rolls on every single creature you control, then they're all getting +1/+1 off of each other, kind of like a coat of arms effect. Could be pretty scary to play against across the table, and having card advantage from the card zone is always super strong. Whenever it or another non-token creature enters the battlefield under control, you get to choose one of these effects. Create a royal token attached to the creature, create a sorcerer token attached to that creature, create a monster roll token attached to that creature. I remember what the monster roll is and the sorcerer roll. We haven't seen the royal token yet. As to like, is it significant enough? Is it good enough? You could rack up the enchantment tokens pretty fast. Getting a bunch of ETB triggers from non-token creatures entering the battlefield is pretty easy to do, especially in white, because there's a lot of things that bounce themselves, or you could bounce another permanent. So things like Cloudstone Curio would be good with this guy. White main line's good. Core Skyfisher, Stonecloaker Gargoyle. It's not as good as white main because it costs 1 more, but it does the same thing. For 1 extra more, you can exile a card from someone's graveyard. Okay, this is the other commander deck. Tigwill, Duke of Splendor, a flying death toucher that gives an anthem to other flyers, or sorry, not flyers, other fairies. Then whenever another fairy you control dies, you draw and lose a life. Having access to card advantage from the command zone is super powerful, and it's going to be a fairy tribal deck according to what I'm looking at here. Does it compete with Una? The thing about Una is you don't need card advantage, you just need Una in play and a ton of mana to sink into her. It's hard to say. I'm curious what people think about this in the command zone, and like who thinks has the better fairy tribal commander, because the other one that comes to mind is the one from the Brawl decks from Throne of Eldraine, the Esper colored one that triggers on artifacts or enchantments. You make a 1/1 fairy, and that's also affected by a weird anthem effect because they get +1/+0 from her. Oh, speaking of the devil. Okay, so Alayla was the Esper version. Now you're getting a Dimir version of her. When you cast your first spell during an opponent's turn, you create a 1/1 black fairy. Whenever one or more fairies you control deal damage to player, go to target creature that player controls. This is a lot weaker than her previous iteration. I know a lot of the fairies that have been coming out since Throne all have flash. So you get to play, I guess, blue flash and commander. If you want to do it, but I wouldn't even probably include this in the 99 of my fairy deck. Goading something isn't all that effective at a certain point, because once everyone's dead and becomes one-on-one, goading officially doesn't work anymore. You're the only person that it can legally attack. If you're the only one left, then it basically doesn't apply. And I'm paraphrasing, by the way. That's not the exact wording. You get what I mean. Hey, Leyline of the Void is getting a reprint. I love the ley lines. They're pretty awesome. I have a buddy of mine. He is quite the name for himself. I'm going to give you a shout out. All of our friends that play Magic with him, we call him Leyline of the Lloyd, because obviously it rhymes with this card, but he plays every single ley line that he can in every deck that he plays. There'll be times where he'll play opening hand 2 to 3 of the ley lines, and it's quite obnoxious. This one specifically neuters graveyard strategies. I have it dedicated to memory. Whenever a card goes to your opponent's graveyard, it gets exiled. It's one-sided. It doesn't affect yourself, and that's why it's particularly good. And if you have it in your opening hand, you could play it for free, like all the other ley lines. Just so you know that I was right, you could see me highlighted down here. Oh yeah, look at that memory game. Just a little toot my own horn a little bit. Nature's Will. I have to think about this card a little bit more. This is the one where if a creature makes contact with a player, you get to untap your stuff. Let's see if I'm right. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal damage to a player, tap all lands that player controls and untap all lands you control. Well, I got half of it memorized. I forgot that it taps your your opponent's stuff. How is that applicable, and why is it so good? Is if you're a good practicing player, you always play your stuff at the latest moment possible. So if you see someone has mana up, you specifically hit them, you tap all their stuff down, and then you basically have an open window to cast your things without being interacted with on main phase 2. And you get to untap all your lands, kind of like a Feast and Famine trigger. I think people, they don't really care so much about the tapping of lands in its applications. They kind of get blinded by the untapping of your lands part.
What am I?
Please! You're as blind as a bat!
But I like to convey that I like both equally as much. This full art version looks cool. I don't have one. Let's take a look at how much it's going for. You get one for $6. That's a pretty good deal. I think everyone should own a copy of this just to have in their collection if they ever wanted to, I don't know, go for infinite combats. They want to do big Timmy Green stuff. It's just a good answer to control decks too for the previous application that I just discussed. Let's look at ley lines. The ley lines are, I think, all under $10. And if they're printing one, I just assume they're gonna print them all. There's so far 2 in each color pie. Yeah, sub $10, you get a copy for $7. Also something everyone should own in their collection. This is a new one. Agatha's Soul Cauldron. You spend mana as though there are any colored activated abilities of creature control. Creatures with a +1/+1 counter on them have all activated abilities of all creature cards with. So what's the bottom ability do? Exile target card from a graveyard. When a creature card is exiled with this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature control. It kind of reminds me of that blue-green ooze that got reprinted in Commander Masters, only this is a heck of a lot cheaper. It's only 2 mana to play. It's generic. Mana costed, it's legendary. There's some specific tutors in white and in green, or captains to say that care about legendary permanents that you could tutor for. Sharing abilities and messing with people's graveyards, that all sounds super cool. And you don't even have to put the counters on your creatures with the Cauldron. You could play a +1/+1 counter theme, put counters on your stuff in alternative means, and get those abilities from this Cauldron. That's really cool. Repercussion, another Japanese. Fun fact, I actually took Japanese back in high school. That was a long time ago, but let me see if I can remember this one. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to itself. I almost had it. I think I was thinking of a different card. I think I was thinking of, I want to say Aether Flash, but I might be wrong. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, Repercussion deals that much damage to that creature's controller. Okay. You basically tether yourself to your creature's... That's basically what this card does. If they feel pain, then so do you. It's a fun little card, especially if you're playing control. That's where this kind of sees application, because most control decks don't run that many creatures. They have such a low creature count, and this fits those decks nicely. So if you're playing a control deck and you happen to be in red, I highly recommend you give this a try because it's probably pretty fun. I think this card pairs well with the new mono red commander, where if you weren't here for my first spoiler video, go check it out because I talk about a legendary creature that basically when you hit something with an instant or sorcery that deals damage, it deals damage to an opponent. But if you have repercussion in play, you basically double dip. Your instants of sorceries deal damage to opponents twice.
Lots and lots of damage.
I like what I'm seeing with that idea. It's very fitting that they included this enchantment in this set with that card. Again, it has that weird bird wing with the star. It's not legal in standard. It's legal in certain formats, so you have to do your due diligence and look up where this card is legal. I don't think this is legal in modern. It's legal in vintage and legacy, but I seriously doubt this gets played in those formats. This is exclusively a commander card to get people excited. Hardened Scales. Okay. So one of those special enchantments again. It doesn't double your +1/+1 counters. You have to be very careful with keywords. Magic is all about that fine print. It's a replacement effect because it has the word instead tacked on the end of this card text box. Basically, you have to think of it as the moment you put on a +1/+1 counter, you put it and an additional one instead. So I think a lot of people get kind of confused about this in doubling season because doubling season specifically says double. Let me describe to you how it's different. Say I were to put a 2 +1/+1 counters on a target creature. If I had Hardened Scales in play, I put on 3. If I had doubling season in play, I put on 4. Now, if I had both in play, that's where the math gets kind of wild and extremely confusing. The doubling season will actually end up doubling Hardened Scales in that scenario. So I go to put down 2 counters. It goes to 3 basically because of Hardened Scales, and that goes up to 6 due to doubling season. It's nightmare fuel to keep track of it because people are playing +1/+1 counter themes. Their decks are full of these things, and sometimes people will have hour-long turns just because you're stuck in an argument with 3 other players about how the +1/+1 counters actually get applied. It's just nightmare fuel. That's why I kind of avoid these kinds of decks personally, because I don't want to have to like explain myself and beat a dead horse. Mana Flare. This is a group hug deck that doubles everyone's mana. I don't like group hug decks. Group hug decks are extremely risky, and the reason being is the player directly to the left of the person who plays group hug decks benefit the most. And they basically get the first crack at winning the game because of someone else. So not only it does that same effect that Ristic Study affects me in that people are winning games based on merits that aren't their own.
You didn't earn it.
And that's why it just pisses me off so friggin' much. I've been in too many games where if I'm sitting to the left of the person playing group hug, I will just stomp the living shit out of the other 3 players. That's just how I build my decks. They're very optimized, and if you give me an inch from a group hug, I'm going to take you for a mile, and that mile usually leads to the end zone of the game. I don't know if they make... I highly recommend people not play these kinds of cards. It's just a bad idea. You're allowed to play Magic how you enjoy it, though. I'm not going to think less of you if you want to play it this way. These are the things that I quietly keep in my mind as I'm playing against you. I'm polite to your face because I'm just a decent person. In terms of judging you as a person, I'm not going to. I'm just mildly irritated, and I don't think less of you if you play this. Magic's just a game, and it's nothing personal. Oh yeah, let's look up what Mana Flare is going for. Could look up Repercussion as well. Mana Flare, you get it for $5. I think Repercussion was due for a reprint. Yeah, $22. That's good. Anything that's over $20, especially these like very niche old cards, it's going to dramatically decrease the value of the card because not a lot of people are playing it. It's just there's so few printings out there that's why it has the price that it does. When I pick up cards, I usually pick them up a month after the set releases if I do want them, and fitting in my budget quite nicely. I have a cap on how much I spend on myself. Lately, it's all been about improving my channel. Like, it doesn't look like it now, but I invested in some lights. They should be coming here tomorrow, maybe the next spoiler video I make, you'll get to see my beautiful pores. And the month before that, I invested in this nice mic, which is why I sound like an angel. Yeah, I don't spend money recklessly, which is probably why I'm really good with it and really good at giving people advice about how to spend their money. Preach something, you should practice it yourself. Intruder Alarm. This is a combo card. It enables team decks. Based on memory, I know what it does. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you untap everything that's in play, and it affects everybody at the table. So you got to be kind of careful and know the decks that you're playing against. If you have mana dorks in play, you use the mana dorks to play a creature, you bounce the creature, and you could repeat that process. Now, if you weave a Beast Whisperer where it cantrips off of your creatures, then you draw your whole deck. And you find your Thassa's Oracle, and you kill people that way. I think I see this Feldergriff decks all the time. Force someone to draw a card, you put a body in play, untap all your stuff, you repeat that process, and force people to kill themselves via a draw.
I have a choice?
No.
And that's how Intruder Alarm works. $11? I have this one. This little Find Waldo version, only it's finding Fibblethip. If you could find Fibblethip in the comments below, let me know, and I don't know, we'll have a good laugh together. 90s kids, we all know where Where's Waldo books are. Maybe Where's Waldo is older. Maybe my older viewers can correct me about when Where's Waldo started, but it's just a happy memory, and that's why I like this printing more. Its adventure is 2 mana, is an instant that puts a 2/2 Knight with Vigilance in play. The 5-drop enchantment causes you to put a +1/+1 counter on each of your creatures and untaps them. That's quite significant. It basically lets you play balls to the wall and attack aggressively. You go to combat, beat on everyone, untap all your stuff, put a counter on everything, and then you have, an untapped board to block. And then the more unfair way you play this is you use it in a very Seedborne-y kind of way, then maybe you want this card in your deck. Fraying Sanity. Let's see if I remember this one, because it's also in Japanese. Sadly, I did take Japanese, but I can only use so much of it because I know hiragana and katakana really well. This is basically written in kanji, and kanji is the hardest written language known to man, so I can't read it. But I have it dedicated to memory. It's a curse. Mill cards equal number of cards that are put in a graveyard from anywhere. Thing on your board dies and goes to your graveyard. You have to match it on your end step. If something gets discarded from your hand, you have to match it on end step. Lightning. Whenever you cast a spell, you may pay 1. If you do, it deals 1 damage to target player planeswalker. I did not know this red one was so awful. I personally have never played it, never seen someone play it. If you pulled this from a pack, I would just be mildly annoyed. Just take a look. I bet it's in pennies. Yeah, 28 cents. Let's look at Fraying Sanity, just so I could prove that I know what I'm talking about. There you have it. Mill cards equal number of cards that are put in a graveyard from anywhere that turn. Get a copy for $4, or you get the facelift version. Oversold Cemetery. This is a unique enchantment in that you have to meet a specific requirement, because then it lets you return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. That magical number is 4, and it can be really annoying to deal with this once this card is turned on. But in the early game, it doesn't do much. I think the risk is worth the effort, though. If you never played Oversold Cemetery and you're in black and you're a creature aristocrats kind of theme deck, this is the card for you. Imagine looping Gray Merchant with that. You can get a copy of Oversold Cemetery for 24 cents. I just got printing in Dominator Remastered. Damn, that borderless one looks pretty cool, so probably not very interested after seeing that. If you didn't know this card existed, I highly recommend you just pick up a copy now, because that's a hell of a deal in my opinion. Then we have Ground Seal. It looks like it's getting downshifted. It used to be a rare. Another card I'm dedicated to memory. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, so it replaces itself, and then it prevents your opponents from being able to access their graveyard. I like playing this game in memory. I have a pretty good one. Hey, I was right. Cards in graveyards can't be the targets of spells or abilities. I guess that's a little different than how I worded it. Ground Seal isn't a catch-all. Things like Embalm or Encore get around this because they reanimate themselves. But if you try reanimating a target with this, it doesn't work. It's a stacks effect, and I love stacks effects that draw you a card. And that way it's not a feel bad if it's a useless card in the game that you're in. A card that recently came out was March of the Machine Aftermath. Spark Rupture. It's a white card. Turns off planeswalkers for 3 mana and cantrips. Love it. keep printing stuff like this, Wizards. Only, make more unique ones instead of reprinting these, because, it's 16 cents. I think it's because
Not good enough.
anymore you have to exile people's graveyards to really effectively mess with them. I think people prefer Tormod's Crypt over something like this. Phyrexian Unlife's getting a reprint. If you have the other enchantment that prevents you from getting counters put on your permanents, effectively you've pill-afforded your way to the point where no one can kill you. It only cares about your life, so if you are forced to draw while you have 0 cards in your deck, you lose still. If you have less than 0 life, it starts putting poison counters on you. It's only be buying you 10 points of damage, but people play this unfairly instead. The enchantment I was thinking of that combos with this is actually called Solemnity. Came out in Amonkhet. You get this for $3. Because these two come hand in hand with each other, I imagine this will also get reprinted in Wilds of Eldraine. Time will only tell. We're still fairly early in the spoiler season. That brings us to the end of today's spoilers. A lot shorter than the previous two. Am I happy with what I saw? Yeah, I think people mistaken my concern about the overlapping reprints from Commander Masters. I was merely just being empathetic for folks that do care about those being reprinted in back-to-back sets. The cards that we know so far that's getting that treatment is Land Tax, Smothering Tithe, Grave Pact, and there was a fourth one, but it escapes me, and I'm hot. If you're anywhere in the US, it's basically hell on earth. It's been like 100 degrees across the country, and I am no exception to the weather and how it affects me. I'm in one of the places in the States where it's uncommon for air conditioning. Cards that I really liked about today, I'm actually really impressed by the faces of the commander decks. They're actually pretty good cards. I'm not interested in buying the decks personally because they only come with 10 unique cards and I pretty much have everything else. But if it interests you and you're a new player, I'd pick them up because they give you card advantage from the command zone and they're relatively decent. If you like what you saw today, subscribe. I love doing this and I really appreciate whatever help I can get and the support. Really keeps me motivated to keep doing this. Comment below if you want to interact with me. I always have time to interact with people. I'm a small channel. No voice is too small for me to hear. Most of the interaction I get is on Reddit, actually, and you get all kinds of personalities in there. It's unique to navigate. I'm just going to say that. Everyone, have a good night. Can't wait to talk to you tomorrow.